Hey everyone, I hope that you are doing well. I am trying something a little bit different. I always, my brain goes in a lot of different directions with things. So I start these different series of things where I'm looking at comparing the different class builds that you get with in the core book, and as well as trying to min-max the best race to fit with the different classes. So I'm still working on those, and more of those will come. But I was thinking about something else that I wanted to try to do, and I've been thinking about this one for a while, is I kind of want to go through like all the power groupings that you have. So as you level up your character, you make choices for new powers. So when you get to a certain level, you'd get to choose another encounter power, and you usually have about 4, maybe 5 to choose from. And so I kind of wanted to spend time and look at some of those options that you have for different classes and at different levels, which obviously there's tons of different classes and levels that you have, especially if we start talking about things that are available in the powers books and stuff. So I'm going to stick to the player's handbook right now, but because I figure that's a good opportunity to kind of show how some of these powers work, and not necessarily say this one is better than another one, but more just to kind of see what the differences would be and when you might choose that power when you level up versus another power. So that's kind of my idea. I want to try it out, and I'm curious what everyone thinks about it. And if it's something that we enjoy, then I will do more of these. And maybe that's something in the Discord server where the folks that are over there can help us figure out what class and level and stuff we want to focus on for future videos. So that's what I want to do today. And for today, we're going to take a look at the Ranger, and I'm looking at 7th level encounter powers. And you might say, well, why did you choose that? Honestly, there's no good reason. I just chose, I usually tend to start with cleric and stuff because it's alphabetically first in the book. And then I end up with a lot of cleric content. So I was trying to get myself a little farther down into the book for some things. And I haven't really done a whole lot with Rangers, and I figured I would stick to heroic tier, but didn't want to do just the first couple levels. I figured I'd jump up to the to 7th level for it. So I don't know. There's not really a whole lot of reason behind it, but that's what led me in this direction. So anyway, before we get into it, please like the video if you do enjoy this, and subscribe to the channel. Check out in the description if you are interested in becoming a channel member, where you can get early access to videos, or becoming a Ko-fi member where you can get access to our Discord server, which is slowly growing, and we're getting a few more people on there and having some conversations every now and then. So it is a lot of fun, and I can see there's a lot of potential there for us to talk about 4th edition outside of these videos in the comments. So anyway, but let's get into this. I am going to flip over to my other screen, and we will take a look at 7th level encounter exploits for our Rangers, and we'll kind of run through each one and talk about when you might want to choose that one for your Ranger, and which ones work better. So the first one on the list is Claws of the Griffin, and this one is uses a melee weapon. It has a requirement that says you must be wielding 2 melee weapons, and you will target 1 or 2 creatures. So whatever the attack is here, you would be able to make multiple attacks, but you could attack the same creature twice, or you can attack 2 different creatures with it. And the attack here is your strength versus AC. With your main weapon and offhand weapon, you make 2 attacks. So basically, this is a power that's going to allow you to make 2 attacks, and you can either attack one target twice, or attack 1 target and then attack a different target. You're going to use your main weapon for the first attack, and then your offhand weapon for your second attack. When you score a hit, you're going to do 2 weapon die damage plus your strength modifier with the main weapon, and then the second attack, you will use 1 weapon die damage plus your strength modifier for the offhand weapon. So just to kind of give a little bit of a demo of what that looks like. So this is a melee attack. So Legolas, in our example here, will be our Ranger. And so let's say that he's kind of positioned like this between Gamma and Epsilon, and decides that he's going to use Claws of the Griffin. So he has 2 melee weapons. They might just be daggers, or some other light blade that he's got, one in each hand. So his main weapon, he decides he's going to attack Epsilon. He would roll his regular strength versus AC attack with that weapon against Epsilon. And if he scores a hit, then he's going to do 2 weapon die damage for that particular hit. And then he has a choice. He can either, with his offhand weapon now, make an attack against Epsilon again, or he could actually attack Gamma if he wants to. That's up to him. So he gets to make those 2 attacks, and he can decide whether he wants to attack the same enemy again or do a different one. If he decides to attack Gamma, then he rolls his regular, again, strength versus armor class attack. and would deal one weapon die damage for the offhand weapon, plus his strength modifier. So that would essentially be the normal damage you would do for that offhand weapon. Now, it's possible that your two weapons are the exact same weapons, so there's not much different there, but you could be wielding two different weapons, one in each hand, so you'd want to choose which weapon is your main, because you're going to get double the damage for that one if you score a hit, so you got to keep that in mind. So if you have a ranger that is melee based, then that is a good option for you to be able to take advantage of the fact that you're wielding two weapons. Now, if your ranger is more of a ranged weapon type ranger, or you're not wielding two weapons, then you're not going to get a whole lot of benefit out there, because it does have a requirement that you have to be wielding two melee weapons. So you got to keep that in mind. The next one we have is, let me bring this one down here. So the next one we have is Hawk's Talon. And this one is a melee or ranged weapon. So now if you are a ranger that has different weapons, that can be where you have some melee weapons and a ranged weapon, you can attack one creature, and it is strength versus armor class for melee, or dexterity versus armor class for range. So just like your normal attacks would be for depending on the type of weapon that you're using. And you gain a power bonus to this attack equal to your wisdom modifier. So that's pretty good. So you get a bonus. So if you have some ability score that you've put into wisdom, and let's say you've got a +2, you're going to get an extra to your attack. And you ignore any penalties from cover or concealment, but not superior cover or total concealment. So I'll demonstrate that in just a second, just so we can see it. And then you get 2 weapon die plus your strength if it's a melee weapon, or 2 weapon die plus your dexterity if it is a ranged weapon. So you're essentially getting your double, I won't say double damage because it's not doubling the modifier or anything, but getting those 2 weapon die, whether it's the melee or the ranged, you get to do 2 of those weapon die for damage. So let's take a look real quick at what that means as far as the bonuses that you get. So let's say that Legolas if Legolas is here and he's using a melee weapon, it's going to be hard to have cover between the epsilon or gamma, because you're in melee range, and short of maybe a fence or something right here where there could be some partial cover because of the fence, things like that. For the most part, you're not going to really have cover or concealment that you would worry about. But then if you're using a ranged weapon, and let's say that epsilon is over here, and maybe we put Legolas like right there. If you were to draw the lines, what you might find is that epsilon actually has cover or possibly concealment from these rocks, which would ordinarily result in a penalty to Legolas's attack against epsilon if he were to try to shoot an arrow, say, at epsilon. But because of this power, ignore any penalties from cover or concealment. So not only do you get your bonus based on your wisdom modifier, you also get to ignore that cover or concealment, and you wouldn't take that penalty, which can be really nice. Now, if epsilon is like over here and has total concealment or superior cover, then that doesn't apply. You would still take the penalties there. But that does give you, if you're, helps you kind of overcome some of the penalties that you would get for the cover or concealment, which is nice. And then if you do hit, you get the double weapon die damage for your arrow, which would be good, or whatever your ranged weapon is. So that is Hawk's Talon. I think that's actually a pretty good one, and I like that it's for both. If you're a melee fighter, then it has something for you. If you're a ranged fighter, it's got something for you. So that one is nice that it has the options there. Next is Spikes of the Manticore. This is another ranged one. And 1 or 2 creatures, dexterity versus armor class, 1 attack per target. And you get double weapon die damage plus your dexterity for the first shot, and 1 weapon die damage plus your dexterity for the second shot. So essentially you get to make 2 attacks. Pretty straightforward with this one. So in our example here, Legolas is, say, shooting at, let's put epsilon over here so he doesn't have the cover, because this one you wouldn't be able to ignore the cover. But Legolas is going to be able to take 2 attacks, and so Legolas might decide, I'm going to attack epsilon, fires a shot, at epsilon, and it's dexterity versus armor class, pretty normal attack for your ranged weapon. And then if it hits, then he's going to deal 2 weapon die damage for that attack, which is nice. Then he has the choice. Do I attack epsilon again, or do I shoot at one of the other enemies out here? So you have the option for your second shot. You're getting to make 2 attacks, and it's up to you whether you want to attack the same creature again or attack a different creature. That second attack, if it hits, is going to deal 1 weapon die damage. So your normal damage is what you would take with that one. But nice to be able to get the second attack on there with that particular power. So I like that one for your ranged rangers. And then the last one that we have to choose from is our sweeping whirlwind. This one is a little bit different because this one is a close burst one. So you have to be using 2 melee weapons. The requirement is you have to be using 2 melee weapons. The target is each enemy in the burst. It'll be strength versus armor class, and then you're going to deal 1 weapon die damage plus your strength modifier for damage. So that's going to be your normal damage that you would deal with that weapon. But then it gets interesting. Then you push the target a number of squares equal to your wisdom modifier, and it is knocked prone. So that's a pretty hefty one. This one, to me, almost feels like it might be a daily power. Possibly if this one dealt like 2 weapon die damage, maybe this would start falling into that daily power category. But let's take a look at it. Let's kind of walk this one through. So this is it's a melee weapon one. So let's put Legolas down here with a couple of enemies, and I don't want to have anybody flanking, so we'll position folks like that. So let's say he's surrounded by a few folks. And it is a close burst one, which means it's going to originate at Legolas, and it's going to extend in 1 square in every direction around from Legolas. So that is your area. So your close burst one starts at the character and then extends in 1 square in every direction, and that's what you got. So every enemy, I believe it says enemy, each enemy in the burst is now subject to an attack. And the way the bursts work is that you will make an attack against each enemy, but you will only roll the damage once. What's interesting for me, and I'm a little unsure about this one, so this will be a case if anybody wants to put some comments in there. It says that the requirement is that you must be wielding 2 melee weapons. But it doesn't have anything that indicates that you're attacking with your main weapon or an offhand weapon. So if you have 2 different melee weapons, I would assume that you would choose to just keep attacking with your main weapon if that is the better weapon, rather than alternating with your offhand or something like that. So it doesn't indicate that you have to actually attack with the other weapon. It just says you have to be wielding 2 melee weapons. So a little unsure about that one. So definitely, if anybody has any comments, I'd like to hear that down in the comments to clarify if anything. Maybe something came out later that kind of clarified that a little bit, or I'm misunderstanding something. But regardless, inside the burst, you're going to make an attack against each of these enemies. So you will make an attack against Epsilon, you will make an attack against Beta, and you will make an attack against Gamma. And let's say that the attack against Epsilon succeeds, the attack against Beta succeeds, but the attack against Gamma fails. In which case you would then roll your damage, and the damage here is 1 weapon die plus your strength modifier. So let's say that you roll your damage die, and then you add your strength modifier, and that results in 7 points of damage. You would deal 7 points of damage to Epsilon and 7 points of damage to Beta, but you would not deal any damage to Gamma because you missed on your attack with Gamma. So you made an attack against each enemy, but then everybody takes the same damage that whatever you rolled with your damage. So that's the first part of this, which is good as it is because you're getting to make all these attacks. But then the second part is you push the target a number of squares equal to your wisdom modifier. So now we get to push Epsilon 2 squares. So let's say that we push Epsilon 2 squares that way, and we get to push Beta 2 squares this way. I don't know if it has to be directly a straight line if I could push Beta that way. So again, comments, clarify the rules, please. If it's more restrictive and it has to be actually that straight line or what, but that's pretty cool too, because now you could push a character maybe possibly in range of one of your allies. So if you've got an ally that has a ranged weapon and maybe where this fight is taking place, that ally was not in a place where they could see this target, you could push them into a position where they're outside of cover, and your ally could attack them, or you could push them into a fire or into a pit or off a cliff or any number of things. So that can really come in handy. Just imagine if you get yourself into a place where you could have up to, what would this be, 8 different enemies that you could have. I mean, somehow you'd have to find yourself surrounded by 8 people, but then you attack all of them and then push them all in every direction. That'd be a pretty cool, epic little move to have in the middle of your battle. But we're not done yet. Then the last little bit is then they are actually knocked prone. So not only did you push them to whatever your wisdom modifier is, I'm using 2 as an example here, but whatever your wisdom modifier is, you're going to push them that number of squares, and then they get knocked prone, which is also pretty amazing. So like I said, this one seems like the type where maybe if the hit was a 2-weapon die damage, this would start falling into where I'd be looking at it almost like more like a daily power, because it has that type of impact on it with the number of things that you do. So, but there you go. That is our 4 level 7 encounter exploits for our rangers. So when your ranger character reaches level 7, they're going to get to choose 1 new encounter power, and these are the 4 in the player's handbook that you get to choose from. And which one works best for your ranger depends on what your ranger is doing and what kind of weapons you gave it and where you're going with that character. So because if you have a ranger that uses multiple melee weapons, then Claws of the Griffin would be good. But if your ranger is using a bow and arrow, then don't pick Claws of the Griffin, because it's not going to work. Or if your ranger is just has 1 melee weapon, don't do Claws of the Griffin. It's not going to fit. Your Hawk's Talon will work with melee or ranged. Spikes of the Manticore is nice because you get that second attack, which is pretty cool. And then Sweeping Whirlwind, I mean, that one it's almost like it'd be hard to not choose that one, but you have to be a melee character, so you'd have to have those melee weapons. And if your ranger is one that's going to be using a bow and arrow or something, or crossbow, then that one wouldn't be ideal, because you're not going to be in a position to where you can take really advantage of that, even though it does have some cool stuff. So in that case, Spikes of the Manticore or the Hawk's Talon might be better for your character. So but there's some good options. I mean, I like that they're all they all got something a little different. And I think there's someone that we'll look at in some of the other characters and at the different levels where there are definitely some powers at different levels that they're very situational, where it's like, okay, that's great, but how often is that going to come up? How, when would I really do that? And so but I don't think that's the case with these. When I look at these powers, these are all ones I could see legit you could fit into any encounter. They would work pretty well. Even if pushing the character doesn't make any sense, but you still get to knock them prone, and you still deal, well, that one's just 1 weapon die damage, but you get to knock them prone, even if you don't have much of a wisdom modifier. The other ones, with your initial attack will do 2 weapon die damage. So that's nice. So lots of good options for the Ranger level 7 encounter exploits. So anyway, that's what I had planned. Let me know what you think about this type of video, and if this is something we want to see more of, then I will plan to do more of them. And it's definitely something that probably on the Discord server we would talk about which class and which level and type of powers we want to talk about, so that we can focus on the ones that are the most interesting. So, but let me know your thoughts. Again, like the video if you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel, and check out the description for other ways that you can support the work. Until next time, take care.